Hello, my name is Andy and I am the Village Idiot. I'm armed with a car and a GoPro and an unhealthy amount of time on my hands. I'm using that time to attempt to visit every civil parish in England. You're watching the East Riding of Yorkshire series. Together with the unparished city of Hull, it forms the county of the same name. There's 172 parishes here. Which one are we in today? Welcome back to the East Riding of Yorkshire, everybody. It's still cold out here, so the hood is still up. Okay, I'm beginning this episode on a bridge, and the bridge is over a beck. And if I turn the camera around here, you'll see the beck. It's not a very deep beck, as you can see. Not a very wide one either, but still pretty fast flowing. Beautiful, crystal clear water down there, I must say. That beck flows to the north of this place, and it shares its name with the village. That is Bugthorpe Beck. And this is the parish of Bugthorpe. Here's my disclaimer for people who may be watching me for the first time. I say things as I would in my native accent and dialect. As a result, I may not pronounce things in the same way as the locals do. Remember, I'm a visitor. It's impossible to know everything. Leave me a comment, spin me a like, and bash that subscribe button. Let's get to today's parish video. Here's a nice little village in the East Riding of Yorkshire. Welcome to Bugthorpe, which is around 11 miles to the east of York, just north of the A166. The name of this place has been a bone of contention for centuries, and still nobody has any real idea of what exactly it means. One thing I can tell you though, is that it has absolutely nothing to do with bugs. It most likely means farm or settlement of a man named Bugge or Bugge. In the Domesday Book, it was referred to as both Buchetorp and Bughetorp. Later written records refer to it as Bogethorpe and Bugthorpe without an E. During the 19th century, it was also known as Buckthorpe, thanks to the local landowning family, the Woods, better known as the Earls and Viscounts of Halifax. Bugthorpe has been largely owned by the Wood family since the early 1800s and forms part of the Garrowby Estate, the largest of all the Halifax Estates. We've actually met the Halifaxes before, way back in Hickleton in the Doncaster series. Garrowby didn't become the family seat until after World War II, when Edward Wood, the first Earl of Halifax, held the title and moved from Hickleton Hall. The boundary of the Garrowby estate has changed several times, but Bugthorpe has always remained within it. So this is an estate village, a fact that's not plainly obvious straight away. Let's go. We begin on the western edge of Bugthorpe on Stephenworth Lane. Our first landmark is Bugthorpe C.A.V. Primary School, which shares strong links with St Andrew's Church. This is the only school around here for a few miles, so as you can imagine, it has a decent catchment area. I was liking these trees alongside it, by the way. Towards the end of the road, we come to a brick-built structure, most likely a barn or a farm outbuilding. The chances are it was made with local bricks. Bugthorpe once had a brickworks. Keep that fact in mind for later, its importance will become clear. We're now on Main Street and we're heading in a northeasterly direction. These big gates belong to the old rectory, which crazily isn't one of the village's listed buildings. And then as we make for the centre of the village, the church comes into view. You might well have heard its bells ringing in that last shot if you listened closely. This has an interesting tale or two to tell in a bit. So we'll talk about the church a bit later. It's actually at the end of this route. We're going to carry on down this main street next, and you might be able to see, or maybe not because the camera's not quite pointing at it, if I just turn it around a little bit, you might be able to see there's a shop there, which is something of a surprise to me really, because a place like this, Bugthorpe, very, very small, you wouldn't expect it to have a shop, but it does for some reason. Well, there we go. Just before we head up this main street, there's a junction here, which is kind of why I stopped here. There's a bus stop over there, and there's also a building which looks like potentially an old chapel or maybe even an old school. There's quite a bit in this area. Let's check it all out. It turns out that building was the Bugthorpe War Memorial Institute. In 1918, following World War I, a piece of land on Bath Lane was leased by the Halifax Estate for this to be built. It duly was by local builders, the Wests. It was finished in 1925 and then opened by Colonel F.S. Jackson later that year. During World War II, the Institute was used to provide a place of recreation for evacuees from Hull. Dead opposite the Institute is a small earthworky area with a beacon. Now let's check out the shop. This is not just a shop, in fact, it's also a post office. In a village this small, you can imagine it's a huge community asset. It's open 6 days a week, although for 2 of those, Thursday and Saturday, it's closed for half a day. In its wall is a George V postbox. Pretty neat. With the shop behind us, we're then treated to this idyllic little scene. That's the village green with the Halifax Estate office next to it. The church is just to the left. Okay, this next section will take us around the village green in a loop, and we'll end up in the churchyard of the church, which you can see just behind that tree over there, and that's the end of our route. Let's carry on. It will come as no shock to learn that part of Bugthorpe is deemed a conservation area, and rightly so when it looks this pretty. There's a number of farms in and around the village. There's one on this road, for example, which leads east towards Kirby Underdale. Next, we turn up Beck Row, which leads north along the back of the green. If you keep walking up here, you'll find the Grade 2 listed Low Hall and a house with a small building attached to it, which was the village's Wesleyan Methodist chapel. There used to be a primitive chapel up there too. Turning around, we can see the Halifax Estate office. Originally, this building was a school and a master's house built by Charles Wood in 1872. Prior to this, girls and boys were educated separately in 2 buildings on Beck Row. These became the chapels when this opened. The school then moved to its current site in 1964. And over the road we've got the phone box, and this one is a book exchange. Good to see one of those again. Okay, one job left, and that is the church, which is right behind me. You can probably tell now why this was at the end of the route, because, as you can see, there's a gate in front of us, and that path leads all the way through the churchyard and will come out back on the main road where we were a little earlier. So let's head into the church and see what this is all about. The Church of St Andrew sits on a small incline with some pretty surroundings and impressive views from its churchyard. This is definitely worth a visit. Outside there's an old hand-drawn plough, a nice reminder of the rural nature of the area this one sits in. The current church is not all that old. It's believed by some that an original Saxon church stood here, but that's never been confirmed. There was definitely a Norman church here though, dating from the 12th century. The nave of that building was pulled down and rebuilt in 1859 thanks to it being in a bad state of repair, giving us the church we see today. Until the 18th century there was a lady chapel on the northern side of the chancel. It was destroyed and its stones were reused to build a bridge over a beck on the road to Malton. It was then rebuilt in 1905. And the east window here contains glass which depicts St Charles Borromeo, a former Bishop of Milan and the patron saint of the 2nd Viscount Halifax. From the 1770s until World War I, Bugthorpe had a brickworks. It was located on the road towards York at the site that is now occupied by Brickyard Farm. Bugthorpe bricks were initially made by hand. Production was later mechanised, but this was not successful and the yard stopped production. Legend has it that the last bricks ever made in the village were used to build a cowhouse and a granary located on the northern side of the road to Kirkby Underdale in 1917. The buildings were later converted to a small brewery, although you won't be getting your hands on any alcohol from here in your local boozer. Bugthorpe brew is made just once a year and only 120 gallons of it are brewed. So only the very lucky and selective few, usually estate workers and lucky shooting parties, ever get to taste this beer. Word has it that the Earl of Halifax enjoys a drop himself, but is sensibly cautious of its powers. It's staggeringly strong. At 6%, it's nigh on twice the strength of your average bitter. So a nice little church in a nice little village. That has been the parish of Bugthorpe. I do hope you've enjoyed it. This has been, so far, one of my favourite East Riding villages. I don't know why, really. It's just got that sort of charm, aura about it. It's lovely. And hopefully the next one will be just the same. I've been Andy, also known as the Village Idiot, and this has been the parish of Bugthorpe. And I'm out.